Baraka's poem In Memory of Radio was first published in 1961. The poem is written in free verse, employing a conversational tone. Sometimes the poet includes a humorous voice. The poem uses the speaker's memory of radio so as to ostensibly evoke a sense of nostalgia and loss. In actuality, the poem comments on the very insidiousness of radio itself and how the medium commands human attention and creates a reality separate from the one in which human beings live. The central image in the poem is a superhero from comic books and radio shows called the Shadow. Under the cloak of invisibility, the shadow hunts down and roots out evil in the world. Let's see the summary of the poem. The title sets the tone for the poem. We elegy to the radio, a nostalgic reminiscence about its effect on the speaker. We get that and more. Lamont Cranston is the alter ego of the Shadow, a black, cloaked crime fighter with an eerie laugh. The Shadow was the subject of hundreds of pulp novels and show which ran in the 1930s and 1940s. The speaker wants us to think about how a figure from popular culture can also be divine. He also, consciously or not, sets himself apart from others who listen to radio, declaring that radio stations such as WCBS, a New York City radio station, and singers such as Kate Smith, a popular crooner who immortalized the song God Bless America and who had her own radio show on CBS, are unattractive. The speaker aligns his taste with Jack Kerouac, one of the leading authors of the beat movement of the 1950s and 1960s, who wrote about jazz and blues and his experiences in the gritty American counterculture in novels such as On the Road, Dharma Bums, and The Subterraneans. The tone of this stanza is smug, almost arrogant, as he lumps the reader in with the rest of you. Like the first stanza, the second stanza begins with a rhetorical question. There is nothing to say, the speaker suggests. He underscores this with a play on these famous lines from Tennyson's poem In Memoriam. It is better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all. Making these lines part of a non sequitur also illustrates the beat sensibility, which set itself apart from high art and saw sacredness in the everyday. His references to linoleum and living rooms, though apparently nonsensical, underscore the inferiority and shallowness of middle-class taste. Baraka continues with the playful tone of the poem in stanza 3, again beginning a stanza obviously not a sage, but also wants to point out that neither are public figures who often lay claim to sage status. Mandrake, the magician, the hero of a comic strip of the 1940s and 50s written by Lee Falk and Fred Fredericks, Oral Roberts is an evangelist well known for soliciting funds over the radio and television. Bishop Fulton J. Sheen delivered the first radio message from Radio City and was the first to host a regular series of religious radio broadcasts. His national NBC show was called The Catholic Hour. Of course, was the genocidal German leader of World War II, responsible for the systemic extermination of Jews and others in death camps. Baraka uses the phrase gas chamber satori ironically to emphasize the moral murkiness with which we perceive public figures and how bad is often seen as good and good as bad. A satori is a state of spiritual enlightenment in Zen Buddhism, itself a popular religion among some of the beats. The reader is told what has only been suggested so far in stanza 4, that good and bad, evil and ugly. That is, one cannot exist without the other. To attempt to understand love is folly, the speaker implies not even a poet can understand love. In stanza 5, 2 lines elaborate on the kinds of shows that the speaker listened to as a child. Red Lantern was Red Lantern was a character from the children's show Land of the Lost. He was a fish who led kids down below the sea to search for their lost toys. Let's Pretend, also a children's show, dramatized the Grimm's fairy tales for radio. The speaker makes the link between his child of pretending while listening to these shows with his activities as a poet, where he also uses his imagination and pretends. Stanza 6 refers to the shadow first mentioned in the opening stanza. To combat evil, the shadow had the ability to make himself invisible. The transformation also echoes a religious idea. The transformation of bread and wine into the body and blood of Christ during the act of communion. Indeed, by describing the shadow in terms of his adversaries, the unbelievers, who would throw stones, Baraka ascribes to him a religious quality which is caused by the shadow's ability to see into the hearts of men. The rhythm of the last lines and the rhyme "Does Love" end the poem on a breathy and whimsical note. Baraka has used his memory about radio as a vehicle for commenting on a bigger theme, the inherent duality of the world and of human nature.